Have you ever stood in front of everyone who matters and said the one thing you can never take back? Not in anger, not in a fight, but casually, confidently, like you're doing everyone a favor by speaking your truth. I destroyed my marriage. 7 years gone because I mistook his greatest strength for his biggest flaw. If you've ever looked at your partner and felt bored by their consistency, if you've ever resented them for being exactly what they promised to be, stop right now. Because what I'm about to tell you might save you from making the same mistake that cost me everything. It started so small I didn't even notice. Little moments that became a pattern that became his breaking point. Click subscribe right now, because the stories I'm sharing could save your relationship or help you understand why your last one ended. Victor wasn't the kind of man who made grand gestures. He was the kind who made breakfast. Every morning for 6 years, I'd wake up to the smell of coffee brewing, not just any coffee, but the Ethiopian blend from that shop on Maple Street because I'd mentioned once casually that I liked it. He'd pour it into the blue mug I'd bought at a yard sale, the one with the chipped handle, because he knew I loved that stupid mug. Steam rising. Kitchen quiet. Him already dressed for work, reading the news on his tablet, waiting for me to pad in wearing his old college t-shirt. When I got the offer to go back to school for my master's degree, it meant 2 years of me barely working, stressed constantly, contributing almost nothing financially. Victor sat at our kitchen table, did the math on his yellow legal pad. He still used paper for important things, and said, "We'll be fine. This matters to you." He picked up extra consulting work on weekends, turned down a promotion that would have meant travel because I needed him home during finals week. Never mentioned it as a sacrifice, just did it. The night my father had his heart attack, I was the one who fell apart. Victor was the one who drove 3 hours to the hospital, packed my mother an overnight bag because she'd left the house in her slippers, sat with my brother in the waiting room and somehow knew when to talk and when to just be quiet. When Dad made it through surgery, Victor cried. Actually cried. He said, "I'm so glad he's okay, Em. I know how much you need him." Not we need him. He always saw me that way, as someone with needs that mattered. But around year 4, something shifted in me. I can pinpoint it now. We were at dinner with my graduate school friends, people who were dating musicians, artists, a guy who was finding himself in Thailand half the year. They told stories about surprise weekend trips, spontaneous decisions, dramatic fights, and passionate reconciliations. And there was Victor, telling a story about optimizing our retirement contributions. I felt this weird embarrassment creep up my neck, like I'd brought my dad to a college party. My friend Natasha cornered me in the bathroom that night. She'd been married twice, dated constantly, always had dramatic stories. She said, "Em, honest question, are you happy?" I must have hesitated because she continued, "Because you're 28. You're not supposed to have it all figured out yet. That's boring." She reapplied her lipstick in the mirror. Safe is fine if you're 50, but this is supposed to be fun. I thought about that conversation for weeks, looked at Victor differently, noticed how he wore the same 3 sweaters, how he preferred Friday nights at home to going out, how he'd turned down concerts because he had an early morning meeting. Things that used to feel secure started feeling suffocating. The first time I said something cruel, we were at his company party. His boss, a woman named Rachel who'd climbed the corporate ladder fast, was talking about Victor's steady performance. Reliable, she called him. The kind of guy you can count on. She meant it as a compliment, but I saw Victor's face, this flicker of something, like he wished she'd said brilliant or innovative instead. Later in the car, he was quiet, finally said, "Do you think I'm boring, Emily?" I should have stopped right there, told him the truth. Instead, I laughed. "What? No, you're just, stable." Stable. He repeated the word like he was tasting it. That's what you tell people when there's nothing else interesting to say. "Victor, come on, you're being sensitive." He dropped it, but something changed in his posture. The way he held his shoulders. That was 8 months before the wedding. 6 months before the wedding, we went to dinner with Natasha and her new boyfriend, a bartender/DJ who talked about his art and showed up 40 minutes late. Victor made polite conversation, asked thoughtful questions about the guy's music. On the drive home, Natasha texted me, "Your husband is sweet, but wow, you two are so different. Do you ever just want to scream?" I did scream. At Victor. Over something stupid, he'd forgotten to pick up my dry cleaning, but it wasn't really about the dry cleaning. It was about how he was always so careful, so predictable, so thoroughly unexciting. I said, "You're 31 years old and you've never done anything spontaneous in your life." He stood in our kitchen, still holding his work bag. "I proposed to you on a beach in the rain because you mentioned once that you thought rain was romantic. You said it was the most spontaneous thing anyone had ever done." That was 4 years ago, Victor. So spontaneity has an expiration date. You know what I mean, you're just so safe. There it was, the word that would eventually destroy us. I watched it land, watched him absorb it like a punch. He said quietly, "I thought safe was good. I thought it meant you could trust me." "It is good, it's just never mind." I walked away, heard him standing there alone in the kitchen for a long time. He tried to change after that. Started suggesting weekend trips. Bought tickets to shows without planning 3 months ahead. Once, he came home with a motorcycle brochure, Victor, who'd never expressed interest in motorcycles, who wore his seatbelt even in parking lots. I should have seen what I was doing to him, should have seen him trying to become someone else to keep me interested. Instead, I felt vindicated, like I was finally getting through. The pattern accelerated. Every time we were around people, especially Natasha, I'd find ways to contrast us with adventurous couples. At a barbecue 3 months before the wedding, I told a story about how Victor had invested in index funds for our honeymoon savings instead of just living a little. People laughed. Victor didn't. He just refilled drinks, played with the host's dog in the yard, became very interested in the grill. Later that night, he sat on the edge of our bed, said, "Emily, I need you to tell me the truth. Do you still want this, us?" I was already under the covers, scrolling my phone. "What? Of course. Why are you being weird?" "I'm not being weird. I'm asking because you keep making these comments about how I'm safe. Boring, predictable, and I'm trying to figure out if that's something you can live with or if you need something I can't be." "Victor, you're overthinking this. I married you, didn't I?" "Yeah." He turned off his bedside lamp. "You did. We stopped having breakfast together, then dinner. Then words that mattered. The silence filled our apartment like water, slow and cold. I'd come home from classes and he'd be on his laptop working. I'd go to bed and he'd stay up. We moved around each other like roommates, polite and distant. But I didn't think it was serious. I thought all marriages went through phases. Natasha said so. She said, relationships are supposed to be work. The passion fades. That's normal. Then came the invitation. His sister Jenna's wedding. She was marrying her college sweetheart, and Victor had been asked to give a toast as the brother of the bride. He was nervous about it, practiced in our bathroom mirror. I heard him through the door one night. Jenna and Michael never gave up on each other, even when things got hard. That's real love. The staying kind. The week before the wedding, I had lunch with Natasha. She'd just broken up with the DJ, was already seeing someone new, a rock climber who lived in a van. She said, "I can't imagine being married to the same person for years." Doesn't it feel like dying, like your life is just over? I thought about Victor practicing his toast, about our silent apartment, about being 29 years old and feeling like I'd already chosen my entire future. I said, "Sometimes, yeah, it does." She raised her glass. "Well, thank God you still have time to figure out what you really want." I drove to the wedding venue the next Friday, Victor beside me in his suit, neither of us speaking. He'd barely talked to me all week. When he did, his voice had this flatness I'd never heard before. The man who used to analyze everything with me, movies, politics, what to have for dinner, now just said, "Sure," or "whatever you want." The rehearsal dinner was awkward. His family had always loved me, but his mother kept giving me these searching looks. His father was cordial but distant. Jenna hugged me, whispered, "Is everything okay with you and Victor? He seems off." "Wedding stress," I said. "You know how he gets." But I didn't know how he got. I'd stopped knowing. The wedding itself was beautiful. Outdoor ceremony, string lights, sunset. Jenna cried during her vows. Michael cried. Victor stood beside his sister, and I saw something in his face I hadn't seen in months, hope. Like he was remembering something he'd forgotten. At the reception, people kept toasting. Friends, cousins, Jenna's maid of honor, everyone talking about love and commitment and choosing each other every day. And every toast felt like an indictment, like they were all speaking a language I'd forgotten. Then it was Victor's turn. He stood, cleared his throat, held up his glass. "I've known Jenna my whole life. watched her grow from annoying little sister to incredible woman. And I've watched her and Michael build something real. Something that doesn't look exciting from the outside, maybe, doesn't make good stories at parties, but it's solid. It's there when everything else falls apart. That's what matters. That's what lasts. He was looking at Jenna, but I felt like he was talking to me. Everyone applauded. His mother was crying. Michael shook Victor's hand, that kind of handshake that means something between men, and I felt angry. Sitting there in my bridesmaid dress, champagne in my hand, surrounded by Victor's family, I felt this surge of resentment. At what? At his toast about boring stability, at the way everyone looked at him with respect. At the fact that he was right and I'd spent months making him feel small for being exactly what he'd promised to be. Natasha's words echoed, "Safe is fine if you're 50. I'd had 3 glasses of champagne, maybe 4. The room felt warm, the lights too bright. People were starting to dance. The DJ was playing that song everyone plays at weddings, the one about growing old together. And I stood up. The band was playing something soft, violins and piano, when I pushed back my chair. The sound, wood scraping against the outdoor deck, cut through the music. A few people turned. Victor's cousin Daniel, Jenna's friend Rachel. I didn't care. I picked up my champagne glass. The crystal caught the string lights, sent little reflections dancing across the white tablecloth. I could feel the bubbles fizzing against my palm where my thumb covered the rim. The evening air smelled like jasmine and vanilla frosting. Behind me, the sun had just set, leaving the sky that deep purple blue that only lasts 10 minutes. I want to make a toast, too. My voice came out louder than I'd intended. Sharper. The music didn't stop, but people stopped dancing. The table closest to ours, Victor's Aunt Margaret, his Uncle Paul, cousins I'd known for years, went quiet. Then the next table. Then the whole reception, like someone was turning down the volume on the world. Victor was still standing from his own toast, halfway back to his seat. He froze. I saw his hand tighten around his own glass. Jenna laughed nervously. "Emily, you don't have to." "No, I want to." I smiled, felt it stretch across my face, too wide. Because Victor gave this beautiful toast about stability. About safe, solid love, and I think that's perfect for you guys. Really perfect. Victor's father leaned forward slightly. His mother's hand went to her throat, touching her pearl necklace, that gesture she made when she was uncomfortable. But I've been thinking a lot lately about what it means to settle. Not settle down, I mean settle. As in, accept less than what you really want because it's easier. Because it's safe. The word hung there, safe. I saw Victor's jaw tighten. And Jenna, Michael, you guys are young. You're starting this journey, and I just want you to remember that marriage doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be this predictable thing where you know exactly what every day will look like for the next 40 years. Someone coughed. A glass clinked. The DJ had definitely stopped the music now. I looked directly at Victor. Some people, and this isn't a criticism, it's just an observation, some people are wired to play it safe. They're the ones who take the steady job, who plan everything 3 months in advance, who never take risks. And that's fine. That works for them. They're happy being reliable. I said that word like it tasted bad. Reliable. Victor's face was doing something I'd never seen before. His left eye twitched once. His color rose, not red, but this awful grayish pink. His hand was still on the chair back, knuckles white. But Jenna, you've always been the adventurous one. Remember when you backpacked through Europe, when you switched majors 3 times because you refused to commit to something that didn't excite you? That's beautiful. That's living. So my toast is this. I raised my glass higher. Don't settle for safe, ever. Don't wake up one day and realize you've built this whole stable life but forgotten to actually live it. Take risks. Keep things exciting. Don't let marriage make you boring. I paused. The horrible thing is, I was about to stop there. I was about to sit down. But I saw Natasha at the next table. She'd come as my +1 to the rehearsal dinner, giving me this encouraging nod. Like I was being brave, so I didn't stop. Because let me tell you what happens when you just accept safe. You wake up at 29 years old next to someone who's never surprised you once. Someone whose idea of spontaneity is trying a new coffee shop. Someone who... Emily. Victor's voice, quiet, final, but I was rolling. Someone who's so focused on being steady that they forget to be interesting. And maybe that's fine for some people. Maybe some people want that. But life is short. too short to spend it with someone who's already retired at 31. The silence that followed wasn't like a normal silence. It had weight, texture. It pressed down on the reception like a physical thing. I could hear the jasmine rustling in the breeze. Hear someone's shoe scuff the deck. Hear the distant sound of cars on the highway. 147 people. That's how many guests were at that wedding. I know because I counted them later obsessively, thinking about all those witnesses. Jenna's face had gone from pink to white. She was standing now, mouth open, looking between me and Victor like she was watching something break in slow motion. Michael had his arm around her waist, holding her steady. His face was carefully blank, that look people get when they're working very hard not to show what they're really thinking. But I was looking at Victor. His eyes changed first. They'd been brown, this warm brown that turned amber in sunlight, the kind of eyes that crinkled when he smiled. Eyes that had looked at me over coffee cups and across pillows and from doorways when he came home from work. Those eyes went flat, not dark, not angry. Flat, like someone had reached behind them and turned off a light, then his jaw unclenched, his shoulders dropped, not in relief, in surrender, in the way a person's body gives up. His face, God, his face. The transformation took maybe 5 seconds, but I saw every microsecond. The hope he'd carried through the wedding, through his own toast, through whatever thin thread of belief he'd been holding onto, it drained away. First confusion, his eyebrows drawing together. Then understanding, his eyes widening slightly. Then something I'd never seen on Victor's face before. Nothing, not pain, not anger, not hurt, just nothing. He set down his champagne glass. Placed it on the table with the same precision he brought to everything he did. The base of the glass made almost no sound against the tablecloth, but I heard it. We all heard it. He folded his napkin. Actually folded it, creasing it carefully into thirds, laying it beside his plate. This man who I'd just eviscerated in front of his entire family, he folded his napkin. Then he looked at me, really looked, and said 6 words, "Thank you for making it clear." His voice wasn't loud, wasn't angry. It was the voice he'd used when canceling our cable service, when confirming a dentist appointment. Neutral. Done. He turned to Jenna. "I'm sorry, congratulations, I love you," kissed her forehead. She grabbed his arm, said, "Victor, wait." But he gently removed her hand. Not cruel, just final. He nodded at Michael. Shook his father's hand. Kissed his mother's cheek. She whispered something to him I couldn't hear, her hand on his face. He shook his head once. No. Then he walked away from the reception, down the deck stairs, across the lawn toward the parking lot. He didn't run, didn't storm off, just walked. Steady, reliable Victor, walking away with perfect posture in his perfectly tailored suit. 147 people watched him go. Then they all looked at me. Patricia stood up, her chair scraping. She opened her mouth, closed it. The woman who'd told me I was the daughter she'd always wanted couldn't find words. She just picked up her purse and followed her son. Judge Henderson stood more slowly. He looked at me with this expression I've tried to decode for 18 months. Not anger, disappointment. No, something worse. He looked at me like I was a case he'd already decided. He said very quietly, "You should leave." Jenna was crying now. Not soft crying, harsh, gasping sobs. Michael was holding her, but she was trying to break away, looking between the path Victor had taken and me like she couldn't figure out which disaster to address first. Natasha appeared at my elbow. Maybe we should. That was so fucked up." This from Daniel, Victor's cousin, who'd been Victor's best man at our wedding. "What is wrong with you?" I tried to laugh it off, raised my glass again. I was just being honest. Everyone's so sensitive. No one laughed. No one moved. I was standing there, alone in the center of the reception, champagne glass raised to no one, my toast hanging in the air like smoke. The DJ started the music again, too loud at first, then quickly adjusted. People turned away, went back to their tables, started conversations that sounded forced and too bright. Jenna let Michael lead her away toward the bridal suite, still crying. Rachel, the maid of honor, followed them, shooting me a look I'll never forget. Pure disgust. Within 5 minutes, the reception had reformed around the hole I'd created, people dancing, laughing, carefully not looking at me. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. The champagne had gone flat in my glass. I could feel sweat between my shoulder blades despite the cool evening air. My face was hot, not with embarrassment, not yet. With anger, at what? At them for not understanding, at Victor for walking away, at myself. I set down my glass and tried to approach Victor's Aunt Margaret. I didn't mean. She turned her back on me, physically turned her back, her gold bracelet catching the light as she raised her hand in a stopping gesture. I pulled out my phone. Texted Victor, that came out wrong, can we talk? No response, I texted again. I was making a point about Jenna and Michael, not about us. No response, I called, voicemail. Victor, come on, you're overreacting. Everyone makes wedding toasts that are a little I don't know, call me back. I found Natasha by the bar. She looked uncomfortable, wouldn't meet my eyes. That was M, that was pretty intense. He's being ridiculous. I was just trying to give Jenna advice about. You eviscerated your husband in front of his entire family. She said it quietly, looking into her drink. I know I've said stuff about safe being boring, but M, there's a difference between private conversations and public humiliation. I drove home alone. 40-minute drive through dark highways, exit signs blurring, the radio playing that same song from the wedding. I turned it off, drove in silence. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Our apartment was dark when I got there. His car wasn't in the lot. I sat in my parking space for 20 minutes, waiting for him to come home. The light in Mrs. Chen's window next door turned off. The couple on the third floor came home, laughing about something. Normal life continuing. I went inside at 11. The apartment still smelled like his cologne from that morning. His coffee cup was still in the sink. The book he'd been reading, something about cybersecurity protocols, was on the coffee table, bookmark halfway through. I texted him 11 more times that night, called 6 more times, all delivered, all read. No response. He came home at 3 in the morning. I heard his key in the lock, heard him move through the apartment. I got out of bed, wearing his old college shirt like always, found him in our bedroom pulling a suitcase from the closet. Victor, don't. Please, I was drunk, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. He was folding shirts, the same careful folds he always made. You meant every word, you've been meaning it for months, you've just never said it out loud before. That's not fair. I love you, I married you, I just think sometimes we could be more. He stopped folding, looked at me, and I saw it again, that absence. More what, Emily? More exciting, more spontaneous, more like Natasha's failed relationships. That's not what I came home every night. For 7 years, I came home to you, I learned your coffee order. I held you when your dad was sick. I celebrated every one of your successes like it was my own. I changed my entire career timeline for your master's degree. I tried to be what you needed, and it was never enough, because I was safe. His voice didn't rise, didn't crack. That was worse somehow. I can change, I said. We can change. We can be more exciting together, we can. I don't want to be exciting. He went back to folding. I want to be enough as I am. I want to be with someone who doesn't see stability as a character flaw. Victor, please. He zipped the suitcase. I stood up there tonight and talked about solid love, about choosing each other, and you stood up and told 147 people that I'm boring. That I've made you boring, that being with me is settling. I was making a point about Emily. He looked at me one more time. I've spent 6 months watching you pull away, watching you resent me for being exactly who I've always been, and I've tried to be more spontaneous, more exciting, more whatever you need. But tonight, you made it clear, being me isn't enough, it never will be. That's not true. It is true, and I'm done trying to prove my worth to my own wife. He picked up the suitcase, picked up his work bag from the closet, picked up the photo of us from our wedding day, the one he kept on his nightstand, and put it face down in the drawer. I'll have a lawyer contact you about the paperwork. He said it in that same neutral voice, like he was confirming a dentist appointment. You're giving up, my voice cracked. Just like that. No, Emily, he stopped at the bedroom door. You gave up months ago, I'm just catching up. He left at 3:47 a.m. on a Saturday in June. I know because I watched the clock, listened to his car start, listened to it pull away. Sat on the edge of our bed in his college shirt and counted the seconds until I couldn't hear the engine anymore. 43 seconds. That's how long it took for the sound of him to disappear. Victor moved in with his parents that night. By Monday morning, his lawyer, a partner at the firm Judge Henderson had connections with, had sent the preliminary separation papers. Clean, straightforward. He wanted nothing except his personal items. I could keep the apartment, the furniture, everything we'd built together. I tried Daniel, his cousin. He's finally happy. Leave him alone. Finally happy. Present tense, like he'd been unhappy with me and I'd been too blind to see it. 3 months after that wedding, I heard through mutual friends, the few who still spoke to me, that Victor had taken the promotion he'd turned down years before, director of cybersecurity. 6-figure salary. Travel, conferences, everything he'd said no to because I'd needed him home. 6 months after, I saw on LinkedIn that he'd moved to Denver. New company. Bigger title. His profile picture showed him at some tech conference, professional and polished and completely unreachable. 8 months after, Jenna posted a photo. Victor with a woman at her restaurant. She was a lawyer, corporate law with kind eyes and dark hair. The caption, "So happy my brother found his person." Found, as in discovered something that had been lost. I looked at that photo for hours, studied her face. She was smiling at him and he was smiling back, really smiling, not the careful smile he'd given me in our last year together. His hand was on the table near hers, not touching, almost. 12 months after they were engaged, I know because I still checked his mother's Facebook like a wound I couldn't stop picking at. The post showed a simple ring, a mountain backdrop, Patricia's caption, "Welcome to our family, Lauren. You've made him believe in love again." Made him believe again. Implying I'd made him stop believing. I'm 31 now. Same age Victor was when I told a wedding full of people he was boring. I live in a different apartment, couldn't stay in ours, not with his coffee cup ghost in the sink. I finished my master's degree, got a decent job, date occasionally. Men who are exciting and spontaneous and never call when they say they will. Natasha got married last month, her 3rd wedding. I wasn't invited. She sent a message instead. "I need to apologize. The advice I gave you about relationships was toxic." I was projecting my own issues. "I'm sorry I encouraged you to destroy something real." I lost Victor. Lost his family who'd become mine. Lost the version of myself who woke up to coffee already brewing and thought it wasn't enough. Lost 7 years, and the man who would have spent 50 more learning my coffee order and coming home at 615 and being there when everything else fell apart. I gained nothing. Not adventure, not excitement, not spontaneity. Just silence where his voice used to be. Sometimes I still wake up at 6:15 a.m. My body remembers, even though there's no coffee brewing. No Victor reading the news. No steady, reliable presence turning my mornings into something I could count on. I destroyed the best thing I ever had with 43 words about settling for safe. And now I know safe wasn't the settling. Thinking I deserved more than safe, that was the settling. Settling for the lie that stability equals stagnation. That reliable means boring. That a man who shows up every single day is somehow less than a man who shows up when it's convenient. Victor didn't settle for safe. He built safe, carefully, intentionally, every single day for 7 years. Safe wasn't a compromise. It was a choice. A gift, and I threw it away because I confused a sturdy foundation with a cage. He's getting married in December. Mountains in Colorado. Lauren's Instagram shows the planning. Patricia helping with flowers. Jenna trying on bridesmaid dresses. Victor in the background of photos, laughing, present whole. I won't be there. Won't hear that toast where someone talks about how he found love again, how he learned to trust again, how he's happy now, finally. I'll be here. Alone. Drinking coffee that's not from that shop on Maple Street because I can't handle the memory, sleeping on both sides of the bed. Living that exciting, spontaneous life I thought I wanted. It turns out boring was never the problem. I was.